Hello and welcome to another episode of the IDS Podcast, and I'm here with Marie Byrne, who's first off the treasurer of IDS, but you're also an interior designer and an educator. So Marie, why don't you, before we get into today's topic and what we're going to talk about, why don't you give everybody a brief kind of 1-minute elevator pitch on your background related to interior design and what you do?
Sure, Brian. Thank you for having me, and hello, everybody. So as Brian mentioned, I'm an interior designer. I actually was a returning student, so I went back to school to pursue interior design. I have a bachelor's degree in interior design, and at some point I was actually just working part-time designing, working for someone, and somebody approached me to teach, which I never had any plans to do. So it was a wonderful surprise when I sort of got talked into it and found that I loved it just as much as I did designing. So now I do both. I've taught in several schools, some at undergraduate programs, and currently I'm teaching at Molloy University.
Great. And it's funny because I hear that from everyone who gets into teaching, where you didn't think you had a passion for it or something you enjoy. And even myself, I'm not a teacher per se, but I've put on workshops, photography workshops and stuff like that, and just helping other people and educating people. And everybody strives for perfection no matter what they do, whether it's photography or interior design. But even if you know enough to share with other people and help other people's career, there's something very fulfilling about that. So.
Oh, absolutely.
Cool. And you said you're Molloy College, which is
Yes.
right here in Rockville Center,
Yes.
Long Island. Cool. So let's start. We have a ton of topics at hand, and I guess what we're going to talk about today is strategies for students or emerging interior designers and best approaches and best things to look for to get started in this industry. And I think you're the perfect person to go into this because you are literally teaching students on a daily basis. So don't mind the phone in the background. We're in Nemo Tile in Hicksville, so they are running a day-to-day operation here. So we might hear some phones and some people walking by. So
Yes, beautiful showroom.
yeah, just ignore that. Ignore any background noise you hear. But we do want to thank Nemo Tile and check out their website for all their different tile options. They're pretty incredible. Yeah. So let's talk about. Let's start with education, not necessarily what to do beyond your education or once you graduate, but let's talk about education and formal education versus, let's say, hands-on training. And I'm going to use photography as an example because that's what I know.
Right.
And you can let me know how it relates afterwards. But, with photography, especially nowadays after 2005, 2006, when everything became digital and everything went on YouTube, there are so many new photographers that have no formal education, and on top of that have no hands-on training. Their training is literally YouTube or the internet. And I was brought up in the photography industry. I started when I was 10. I'm the son of a photographer. And first off, assisting my father, and then while I was in college and beyond, I was working for other photo studios for years, assisting and all that. And I think, and maybe it's an old school mentality, I think having that hands-on training pays so much dividends. And I went to film school, and I'll be honest, and I'm not trying to knock what you do or anything or any educational system, but I learned so much more in hands-on training than I did in my 4 years of school. So talk about, I guess, formal training. And I think it's different for interior design because you have to learn color theory and all that type of stuff, which they don't probably teach you when you're hands-on.
Right.
But talk about, getting a formal education or going to an interior design program versus just going out there with an interior designer and watching and learning.
Right. So I think formal education is very important in our industry. The reason is that, most people go into this because they think they have a knack and they've done something for their family and everybody thinks they do such a wonderful job and they know a little bit about color. They know a little bit about this and that. And by going to various classes, like you said, something, for us, color is an entire course. So, of course, I always loved it, but I think midway through that color course, I was looking at color in a completely different way, and I never looked at any color the same after that point. So I think that's just one example. I think you need some technical skills You need to know how to draw a floor plan to scale. And yes, you could get those things on the job, but what I find is you can't just do things in the field. So it also adds to not only your credibility, but also gives you the confidence to do it. So whether you're going to work for somebody or eventually go into your own business, you start out with this sort of confidence that you know something. Now, you also need the field work. So you need to have that as well, because you can't learn everything in a classroom either. So sure. I believe that you need that formal training and that background. And also what I see in the industry is that it really gives our industry a bad rap when somebody really doesn't know what they don't have a background, and they're sort of doing things and making all these mistakes.
Yeah, I almost equate it to like going to school will give you that formal interior design training, but going out in the field will give you a lot of those other elements which you can't get in school.
Absolutely.
Talking to customers. I don't know if interior design programs have classes on running the business and stuff like that. I'm sure some of them do.
Yeah, we do.
But marketing and running your business and
Right.
stuff like that. I know that was, for me, one of the biggest things lacking when I went to film school. I knew everything I can do technically, but I got out of film school, I was 22, 23 years old, and I had no idea how to make money with this. Right. It's like, now what do I do? And there's nothing there. So I think it gives you a lot of those skills that hands-on training, where learning how to talk to people, learning how to communicate, and a lot of those business things that, they might teach you formally, but don't come up unless you experience it. And there's a lot of those.
Right. And you're right, absolutely right about that. And also you need to apply what you know to real world, real-time things that are actually happening on a job. And you see, like all the trades, because we deal with all the trades, so that's the thing too. I know that I can't speak for all programs, but any program that I've ever taught in, we always talk about, so if we're talking about a material, we're talking about the installation process, even though we're not doing it. So we know when we go on a job if something's being done correctly or not. The other thing in school that people don't realize is we always, any school I've ever taught at, including my own education, you have these critiques and you have these deadlines. It really forces you to get things done on time, which is really, so it kind of prepares you, so to speak, for the
real life.
For the real life.
So what skills is it important for students to focus on in school? Because we all go to school and we all go through these programs, and there's a lot of stuff that ends up being a waste of time. That's just the reality of it.
Right.
What are the skills that students should focus on while in school that are going to be most beneficial for them on the other side?
I'm going to have to say I can't eliminate anything. Sure. There's really nothing that I feel is not important. Even if you go through, so in a certificate program, they're zeroing in on materials as a class, color as a class, drafting as a class, so those are the real, just zeroing in on the profession. And we do have a business class too. But in an undergraduate program, you get other things, and but they're all valuable, like psychology for one, right? I mean, you take a psychology course, you're always dealing with people. Yeah. It helps you with that too. But yeah, there's probably some things that get thrown on the wayside. But I never think anything you learn is lost. It gets applied somewhere.
Somehow or another.
Somehow.
All right, cool. Let's shift a little, because this is a podcast for IDS, and let's talk a little bit about networking. So you just graduated school and you want to start networking with other professionals. What are the best approaches? What have you heard from your students has been most effective? What have you heard from colleagues has been most effective in different ways to network and meet other professionals, both not just interior designers, but even other affiliated contractors? Right.
Actually, because of my connection to IDS, and other membership organizations through the years, I'm always encouraging them as students to actually get out there and go to the events, and because they really do welcome students there. So they get to see those things before they even graduate.
There's a student membership,
yes,
if I'm not mistaken.
Student membership, yep. And it's free. It's a free membership.
Yeah, there's no reason not to, yes.
Yeah. So, but even if they didn't, let's say somebody's listening in has never been encouraged to do that as a student when you get out there, being involved in a membership organization is really important because even, you're dealing with other designers, of course, and other people that are in the field, other industry partners. And so you might get a job, you might get an internship, you're going to mingling with those people. And the other thing is, at least with IDS, you have this this component of education. In other words, they're talking about something in there. So it's a kind of a win-win situation.
Yeah, no, I think it's important. I think that's the most important, for me, for instance, for IDS and networking, I think that's been the most important thing was meeting people outside of my direct industry, because I go to a lot of photography networking events, and that's great, and it's always great to talk with like-minded individuals and share ideas, but you're not to go out and meet people that are outside of your industry.
Right.
Like that's how we met, and
right.
We're not, even though we're in the same industry, we're in different fields.
Right.
So, and you never know where that'll lead regardless. We met years ago, I guess, at an IDS event that led to a class I think I taught a couple of years back for one of your students. Right. And, we always see each other at the meetings. So just having those relationships with other colleagues, because you never know. You never know when you need a photographer. You never know when you need a tile company. You never know. Just so you have in the back of your head, all right, I've met this person. He's good. He's a nice guy. He's good to work with. Let's go and call.
Yeah, just to add to that so I talked about the ones that are directly industry related, but there are other networking opportunities out there. There's groups that meet that they will actually have one person from each profession that they only allow. Like they'll have an interior designer, they might have a photographer, they might have a flooring installer. So, and they're all, they either meet for breakfast or once a month or something like that. And that's another way to sort of, branch out a little bit and get to be known from other people that may
and what
not have
about
known you.
Expos? And there's expos all the time, and we're in New York City. There's expos all the time at Javits and here and there, and workshops and stuff like that.
Well, this is always going to help. This kind of gets to, do you sort of put a stop to it? So even if you have a 4-year degree, do you stop then going to learn things? And I don't think that I think in our field, it's important that you continue to educate yourself. And one of the places is these, like you said, the Javits Center or any of these places where they're bringing up things that are involved in the industry. You're going to learn something. You're going to see new furnishings that are out there, the new trends that are out there. It's just going to make you more valuable. So not everybody goes into their own business either right away or ever. They're going to be working for somebody. That makes you more valuable to an employer even, that you might even know something they're not aware of. So I think that's helpful.
So let's talk, you talked about value to an employer. So let's kind of transition to that a little bit. When you graduate school, or even while you're in school and you're looking at internships or entry-level jobs right out of school, first of all, is that a good approach? Should you get internships? And then beyond that, what are these employers looking for in interior design? Are there any characteristics or different things that employers look for from an interior design standpoint when hiring?
Well, that's kind of a twofolded.
So let's take it back a step. Yeah, let's start like the relevance of internships while in school.
Well, having internships while in school is really important because I think, you're learning. And so, you're learning something in school, basic information, and now you work for somebody, even if it's 1 day a week. And even if you're not getting paid, it's really I always tell students, look at it as a class you're not paying for, because when you are doing an internship, what usually happens is, whoever the person is, they're really kind of, especially if you're not getting paid for it, they're very happy to impart upon you some information and help you along the way. And many of those internships become jobs, become part-time jobs, become full-time jobs. So, but even if that never happens, I think it's really valuable. And also, I also encourage students to, they not always get a job right out of school, even myself included. There's no guarantee that you finish, you're getting a job, and your dream job. So, and many people have to work. They need to work. Yeah. So even taking something on after you get out, even if, again, 1 day a week, it's going to give you great, experience. And when it's something that you can put on a resume, it doesn't matter whether it's an internship, it's experience.
Yeah. Do you have any fun examples of anyone that turned into... Obviously, you don't have to say their names, right. But people that intern that turned into employment.
Yeah, I always bring up internships to students at various classes, especially in the business class that we have. And so I had a student, I don't remember which class it was, and I'm bringing up, and I like to talk to you about internships and whatever. So she says, anybody have any comments to that? And she says, well, I did exactly what you said to do in the last class. And there was really, I didn't know I couldn't find anything on LinkedIn or a place where you would get employment, but I just went online and I sort of looked at the designers that were in my neighborhood, and I contacted them. And at first they said, gee, we don't need anyone. And then about a month later, they emailed me back and said, are you still interested in interning? Mm-hmm. So she ended up working there. First she was an intern, then she became a part-time, then she became full-time. So she really...
You don't know unless you ask.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they could always say no. That's
exactly. That's that's the biggest thing, I think, when people get out of school, is almost they're afraid to ask. And it's funny, I tell people all the time, I work for some of the top global brands I shoot for, and people always ask me, like, how did you land those? And I just asked. It's not as hard as you think it is. I just asked them if they need it was a little more drawn out than that.
Yeah, a little more finessing.
Yes, but I literally just asked them, and you work your way in. So yeah, don't hesitate to ask.
Right. That's like I just said, they could say is no.
No, exactly. So on that note, on internships, because I want to talk a little bit about volunteering, and I guess internships in a way can be looked at as volunteering. It's different, I understand. Yeah. But you're volunteering your time for the sake of education. Right. I understand that.
Right.
But what about volunteering and pro bono work? Because a lot of people I know in the photography side of things, everyone's like, know your value, don't work for free.
Right.
And I don't necessarily subscribe to that. IDS has the Paid Forward project every year.
Right.
We just finished the John Thiessen Foundation. He was on the show, and I shot that spot for free. Right. I didn't. It's a pro bono. It's a charitable cause, and I'm okay with that because, first of all, I think it's networking, and I think part of me has to give back. Yeah. So beyond that, what are your thoughts as far as volunteering? I know 4 of the designers in IDS volunteered to do the John Thiessen Foundation this year as the Paid For project. No one got paid a penny. Right. I know tons of vendors locally all volunteer, all donated. That's what I'm saying. All donated. Yeah. Tons of stuff from TVs to furniture to this to that. Everyone donated. So let's talk about doing some type of work like that. And is there value to that?
Yeah, I think absolutely. But not only that, too. Within organizations, you can volunteer to help on a committee, mm-hmm. too. It just gives you
we're both
skills.
On the board of IDS.
Skills.
Yep.
Skills that you didn't know you even had. I mean, it just builds up your everything about who you are. Mm-hmm. And the thing that I always say about volunteering is you never should go into volunteering with the sole purpose of doing it for you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're doing it to give back, as you just said. And it could be something completely unrelated to interior design. So yes, we have the one that's in the organization for interior designers, but what about, you know, you love dogs, so you go, you donate your time, mm-hmm. and you volunteer to be on a board or just do anything for mm-hmm. that organization. It gives you a sense you have a great deal of satisfaction because mm-hmm. you helped that cause that might be very dear to you, or that people that really, really need it. And then you don't know where it's going to always lead because that person saw how you worked there. Tell somebody else. Mm-hmm. And it's very organic, but I always find it comes back to you somehow.
Yeah, and it helps build your network. We
Yes.
spoke about networking before,
Yes,
and I think that's the key to anyone who runs a business or is a professional, is just building your network. The more people you have in your network, in the long haul, the more successful you're going to be, no matter what you're doing. So just building your network, especially in different industries. And yeah, like you said, it doesn't have to necessarily be, I think if you have a skill that you can offer that other people don't, you know, for instance,
Right.
Next month, I'm photographing a 5K race for charity, right. And I don't shoot events. I never do. I have years ago, but I've been doing this every year for the last 15 years. And they ask me, because I have a skill that I can offer, which is photography. That, you know, if he asked me, hey, do you want to just come on the board of this and help us organize it? I'd probably say, no, I don't have time for that.
Right.
But I have a skill that I can offer, and it takes an hour and a half of my time, 2 hours of my time. Sure, let me go ahead and do it. So.
Yeah. And confidence. You know, confidence is very important. There isn't anyone, I don't care how many years you're doing it, that can't benefit from building confidence. And the more people that you're out there with and helping and just networking with helps build your own confidence, I think.
Yeah. All right, so we spoke about a little bit, I guess, internships and entry-level jobs. So speaking of entry-level jobs, what are your thoughts on, I guess, especially when you come out of school, because I think for the most part, over people's career that changes, but, you know, freelance versus full-time employment, and they each have the pros and cons, but is there any specific advice you can give to someone fresh out of school? Is it better to go out and just go full force and start your own business and freelance, or is it better to get that experience and go work for somebody and maybe some challenges you face with both options to help people right. Better educate and make a better decision for themselves?
Well, I always advise, if people have asked me what to do, work for other people for a while, because even if you've done internships or you've done part-time work, working for somebody, but be selective of where you're working. So, you know, working, if you've done, for example, internships in, let's say, a furniture store already, then pick something else that will give you a different experience, and learning possibly from another designer is really the best, because then you will see the whole process from start to finish. You're kind of any mistakes you make, or you're making them, you know, which everybody makes mistakes even when you're in business, but again, confidence, mm-hmm. and that will offer you getting into your own business in much better footing, I think.
Yeah, and I also think when you work for somebody else, those mistakes, although obviously you're responsible for them, they're right. under someone else's name.
Right.
And they won't follow you for however long. No, well, forever, or even for you know, a temporary piece of right. time. But you don't want mistakes like that to follow you. And it's always better, I guess the best term is to learn on someone else's dime.
Right.
And also, I think when you're starting out, from a business side of things, I feel like you don't know how much work is really involved.
Absolutely. Until
you go. So you know what? Might as well go work for someone else and become the best designer you can be, because then when you go on your own, you have to handle all that other crap that you didn't even think of, from marketing to invoicing to this to that. I mean, calls, this, that all day. Where if you're working for someone else, you can really do what you love and just design all day.
And some people do that with the purpose of eventually getting into their own business, and then they see, as you mentioned, all these other jobs that are not so ideal that you have to do if you want to be in business. So they change their mind. They say, "I'm really, you know what? I'm just gonna stay working for somebody, and it's not for me. It's not really for me."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then it offers you security too.
Yeah,
you don't have to find your next job.
Exactly.
You know your salary is getting deposited right into your bank every Friday, and you got the money.
And you can take a vacation.
Exactly, or you go home at 5 and you don't have to think about it till 9 a.m. the next day.
Exactly.
So. All right, now let's dive into a little bit of sort of tools and technology. There's not going to be a deep technology talk, but I mean tools. I'm assuming you learn a lot of this in school, but what tools should designers have at their disposal, whether it's like software or this and that, that they need to know when they get out, whether they're working as a freelancer or an employee working for an employer? What are those must-haves that you sort of need to know, or else you're not going to really get anywhere?
So sometimes you're in school, you don't have computer-aided design program software. So that's basically taking, a floor plan, or whatever the type of drawing is, and putting it onto a computer. Many employers are looking for that. Sometimes they're specifically looking for AutoCAD, and other times they have their own. I don't want to say version of AutoCAD, but a different type of software that also does computer-aided design and drafting. So I think that is something, that's one. And the other thing is three-dimensional. If we're talking about technology, something that can pop things up in 3 dimensions is something that is looked for, maybe not necessarily when you're in an entry-level position, but eventually will get you, will be something possibly in an office, depending on where you end up working. And then if you do get your own office, that's going to be something sort of the client is looking to see something in 3 dimensions, which of course you can do by hand, but it's a lot quicker, but that's only after you've learned it. There's always that learning curve for software.
Yeah, and I don't want to dive so into this or into it at all because we have a separate episode devoted to this, but I think it's important because it's so new that students start to learn how to utilize AI.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's so new. We have an episode devoted to that in this season with Jenna. So, and that's going to be all about AI. Right. And I've seen some of this stuff, and it's the way interior designers are utilizing AI. I don't know if you guys teach that in school, but the way...
Not yet, but it's in the thought process.
Okay. But the way designers are utilizing AI to make stuff that would take them hours done in minutes, literally minutes. It's just, and the work that the AI algorithms are producing is just insane.
Yeah. The whole thing is that you have to be sort of willing to go to the next technology. You can't have your head in the sand. It's just like saying, oh, I'm not going on the internet. I mean, I'm sure somebody said that when that first was out there, right? Yeah. And we can't even... We're on the internet every minute of every day practically, right? So the same thing with AI. It is new. It's not completely there, so to speak, but diving into it right away is really a good idea because you'll be learning along the way, just like anything else, as it gets better and better. But definitely you can't think it's going to go away. It's actually,
not going away.
You know what? We've had AI. People just don't realize that we've had AI from the minute we've asked
picked up our smartphones
Google,
exactly.
We've had it, so but now it's how are we going to use it as a tool. So this is not to replace us, we don't want it to replace us.
No.
We want it as a tool.
And I don't think it ever will. You know,
No.
there's a funny conversation always going on with, in the interior designer communities. Is the work that we do gonna get replaced by renders and AI? And I personally don't think so, because a render is never going to be the real space. Right. But renders have their place, especially in the type of work you do before a project. But yeah, the stuff that's coming out of AI is just so phenomenal, and the way it makes workflow so much more efficient and takes the guessing game out of hours and hours of work. Embrace it.
Yeah, I think that's the word. Embracing technology. You really do have to, I think.
Cool. So let's talk about marketing a little. You're fresh out of school, or even while you're in school, because ultimately we're all just building our own brands, right? So you're in school and you want to start marketing yourself, whether it's to get clients, to get a job, whatever you're marketing for. What are some of the best approaches? And obviously social media is probably the number one nowadays. Yeah. But what are the best approaches that students can look for? And what can they start while they're still in school? And what should they focus on beyond once they're in the work field?
Well, you brought up social media. Of course, social media is key. And the thing is, as far as teaching students, they probably know more about it than you do.
Yeah.
Just speaking, about myself, right? They know. They've been diving into social media probably since
they're kids.
Since they're kids, they're in there. I know my granddaughter's been doing it for who knows how long, right? Yeah. But it's how are you going to use that social media, and what are you going to put out there? Because, you're on Insta. That's okay, it's gone, but is it really gone? So if you watch what you say out there and the content that you put out there, even as students, should be something that says something about yourself.
Yes.
At the same time, about your design sensibilities, so to speak. You don't have you're in school or even out of school. You don't even have a project, a real project that you might show. So what are you going to show in there? Well, you could show other designers' work, giving them credit.
Okay.
You always have to give credit.
So I'm going to stop you there because that's a pet peeve of mine.
Why?
I hate when
somebody puts it out there?
When designer accounts, all they do is just show other work. Because first of all, I look at that as just a means to build following.
Oh,
that's how I look at it. Second of all,
that could be.
Also, Instagram actually announced last week or 2 weeks ago, I don't know if you even heard this, that they're actually cracking down on showing accounts that just curate other images.
Right.
Because they want people to show what they do. They want to show them. They want to show their own, especially for creatives, their own work.
Right.
So, if I was, let's say, curating some of the best interior design photography and putting it out there, that's great, but am I really going to get hired? Nobody knows. No one still knows what I do.
That's true, and I was definitely not saying that should be everything that you put out there. But then, I always get, well, what am I going to put out there? So that
what
could be
what
one.
I do is if I see like an architecture and interior design image that really stands out to me and I want to share it, I'll post it to my story.
Right.
Because it's there, it's on top, it's there for 24 hours, and it's gone.
Right.
But if people are still coming to look at my Instagram feed, which is essentially a portfolio nowadays, to see my work, I want them to see my work. I don't want them to see 20% of my work and 80% of other people's.
But again, we're talking about students, and we're talking about emerging people that.
But I think it's important to start that and do it properly from the beginning.
But you could also, so you can show, if you have a nice board, why can't that be on there? And how about when you go somewhere? You don't have to go far. You can go right into New York City, and you see a beautiful building, and look at this beautiful detail. It's Art Deco. Say something about that you have some knowledge behind you.
Colors that stand out.
Colors or something you saw in a showroom. Mm-hmm. So there's content that you could put out there when you don't have anything of your own. And a lot of times I see that, especially younger people are always. They say, oh, well, Facebook. But, Facebook could be a place where there's an employer there, or there's also, if they're going to be into their own business, a different demographic possibly, and they're linked. So those are the two kind of major ones.
Exactly. And for me, it's also LinkedIn. And I think LinkedIn is one of the
LinkedIn.
most overlooked
Yes.
social media platforms out there,
Absolutely.
especially in the professional world.
Right.
I mean, if anything, just to find the right person you want to speak to, for someone you want to work with, a client, this or that. I mean, for me, it's a little bit different because I work with different brands. So if I need to find the person who's the marketing manager of XXX company, I can find that in 2 minutes on
Right.
LinkedIn. And interior designers, it's a little different, but I guess it depends on the type of work you go into. If you're doing small residential projects for homeowners, yeah, maybe not. But if you want to work with some bigger brands and maybe
Right.
do commercial work and this and that, LinkedIn is so crucial to start building it's almost like the network we spoke about before,
Right.
building it virtually
Right.
through LinkedIn and just start connecting with other companies or brands you might one day want to work with, or even big architectural firms that you might want to collaborate on a project with, just to start connecting with those
Exactly.
people, because you never know when an architect's going to need an interior designer for one of his huge projects. So LinkedIn's the way to go. And are there any marketing strategies or mistakes people should avoid? Have you seen people, I'm going to try this, and no, it doesn't work?
You know, people have I think people still need a website, even if it's just a one-page something that
You need
says
something
it.
just to show you're
something
legit, I
out
think
there.
so.
Many people say, I don't need it's something that nobody goes to the websites. But it actually, when it comes to, so when you're opening accounts, so let's take it to the fact that you might end up going into your own business. You open up accounts. I've come across, vendors that actually want to know your website.
Yeah.
It's kind of a little bit of a legitimacy, and even online sources that just sell online want to see a website. So
Well, also the biggest difference, I think, is that you own your website. You don't own Facebook or Instagram. And if you rely solely on a social media platform, I mean, clearly Instagram is not shutting down, but let's say in 10 years, Mark Zuckerberg says, I don't want this anymore. Goodbye, I'm shutting down.
right.
Your 15 years of marketing and promotion is done in the click of a button. It's gone. But your website, you control. It's always there. It's always yours. So,
But, you bring up something very interesting, though. I found out many years ago that, people, they feel like, I don't know anything about a website. This is when websites were really very important. You needed a lot of pages on the websites. And they would hire a company that would own their domain name. So that's a mistake I always try to tell students to avoid. When you do a website, if you think a professional should do it, make sure you own your domain name so that you could take your domain. As I know a colleague, they were holding her website hostage, really, because the people were not doing what she asked, and she wanted to get somebody else, and they had her domain name. So,
that's crazy.
so that's important. That's a mistake that you shouldn't
there
make.
you go.
Yeah.
Own your domain name.
Right.
All right, cool. Let's talk about continuing ed. Obviously, people right out of school don't have to tackle that right away, but it's something everybody needs credits along the lines, and on top of that, everyone needs to learn new things coming out, new trends, new technology, all that stuff.
Yeah.
So on that, I mean, what are the best ways to stay current with trends, technology, stuff like that?
So I disagree a little bit, because even if you don't need the CEU credits, the information that you get is valuable.
Sure.
So
that makes sense.
Yeah. And one of the things, of course, over recent times is that some of these you can get online. So if you don't have some of them in person and some of them online, and you have, as you said, learning about the new trends, things you didn't even know, things that are usually the new trends sometimes are what's not even on the market yet. So it's what's going to be happening. And technology, well, as we all know, everything is connected with technology today. There isn't anything that you can't do from your phone. So learning about all of that, all the intricate places that technology is happening is constantly changing. So you really should be on top of that.
And there's so much to learn about things that aren't even interior design specifically related, but related to your industry, whether it's bookkeeping, whether it's more marketing, whether it's learning copyright law for photography, all that stuff. Like, that's all stuff as a creative, and you're dealing with those stuffs on a day-to-day basis. You need to learn, and maybe or maybe not school teaches you, maybe or maybe not you learn at hands-on experience, but there's always somewhere out there to learn more and more and more. So
absolutely, I agree.
Cool. So let's sort of end, because we're running low on time now.
Okay.
We spoke a little bit about internships, but I want to sort of turn to mentorships, because I think that's important, and I think it's crucial for, especially for people starting out or any time down the line. You know, for me, I was at a crossroads maybe 7-8 years ago, and I hired a business coach to help me kind of revisit my identity of where I wanted to be as a photographer. So what are your thoughts on hiring mentorships? Does it offer people the ability to sort of shape their career in a way they want to?
So, you know, there's two things. So, of course, there's a mentorship that, as you just pointed out, as a business coach, that could possibly be helpful to you. So just be careful, you know, vet that person, not only what you see online, but try to find out from others how good that person was. And of course, your affordability, you know, how much can you afford, you know, so just try to use the most, but it's worth every penny if they're going to direct you in the best possible place you can be. But there's also people that are willing to give mentor you, not maybe from morning till night, but I know certainly I've mentored students way after their time in school, you know, because they've gone to meetings and I've seen them, you know, so because they've networked. So it's kind of all going together, right?
So if a student or a fresh grad, or any interior designer for that matter, no matter, even if you've been in the industry for 20 years, you can benefit from a mentorship. What kind of approaches would you recommend, or the best way to approach potential mentors, or how to find one that kind of suits you?
That's a good question.
Sorry, put you on the spot.
You put me on the spot. It's kind of harping on the same topic that we've just had. You see, when you get yourself out there and you network with people, this is when you talk to others that say, oh, I just went to a great coach and this is what happened. And sometimes it doesn't even have to be related to your industry either, that person. It just could be something about your personality that you need to sort of, you know, work on.
Okay.
You know, so it could be any kind of it could even be a self-help person. So I think word of mouth is really the best thing that you can do. And as I said now, so I just pointed out I've mentored students beyond when they were in school, but I've also given advice to people that I've met that have just gotten out there because I've seen them somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's two things, and which was the case for me when you look for a mentorship. And I think number one is, are they successful? Because you want to learn from someone who's done it and done it well. And number two is the work they're producing. This is more specific if you're looking for an interior designer as a mentor or a photographer as a mentor. Does their work resonate with you? Because you don't want to learn from someone whose work you don't even vibe with. You know, it's a different vibe. And then, you know, I'm going to go back to what we said earlier, just ask. Because a lot of people have not even been approached with, hey, you know, do you want to mentor me? And most people, like you said, we spoke about giving back. Most people want to help other people, especially newbies in the industry. So
it's nice to impart knowledge that's very hard. It was hard getting it all, right?
Well, you learned it from somewhere.
Right.
Whether it's in school, whether it's hands-on experience, whether it's YouTube, you learned it somewhere, and somebody taught that to you. And I feel like that's just the cycle of professional employment is you learned it from somewhere, give it back to somebody else, and everyone's just going to get better and better as time goes.
I agree, but can I just add one thing, though? Not only work that resonates with you, is when you get to work with somebody is how ethical are they? I find that you want to be linking yourself to people that are ethical and people that have a good reputation. You don't want to kind of you don't want to be taught the wrong things.
Yeah, and I think that goes in line with the personality. I mean, if you know someone's up to some shady stuff,
Sometimes you don't know right away.
That's true. That's true. Sometimes you find out the hard way. But
yes.
Those two are very important. Well, we're running low on time, so I want to thank you again. First off, I want to thank Nemo Tile for this space today. Looks beautiful.
Absolutely.
If anyone's watching on YouTube,
come and visit.
Yes, you can hear their showroom is busy. You can hear all the noise going on in the background. So we're in Hicksville, but they have locations all over the tri-state area and everywhere.
Yes.
And thank you, Marie. So can somebody? I mean, do you do social? I don't know. Not enough.
Yes,
no one does enough.
Not enough.
Or website.
But they can always get me through IDS.
Through IDS or your website, exactly.
Yes.
If they want to find you. So thank you, Marie. This was good. Hopefully,
thank you.
It was a bit educational for some newbies coming out of school or new emerging talent, or even some people who have been in the industry for years. Oh, you know what? Let's talk for a quick second, even though I'm saying goodbye.
Yeah.
Because I think this is good for students. The Swatched event.
Yes.
You want to just give us like a minute and just explain what it is, because it's good for students. I think.
Yes, it's a design competition. You have an hour to put together a board, and it's like a lot of fun. Yeah, mood board. Yeah, because it's not a real, it's not an actual project. That takes a lot more than an hour, but it's a lot of fun. It's a whole social thing as well, and there's a student component to it, and then there's the professional. So if you're just out of school, you can be in on the professional level, and
if you're in the student, you can be in the
And people are shocked. They say, "Oh, well, I didn't think," and they win. Then when they win, they're very surprised.
No, it's great, and I think for a student that has so many components, because it has the networking component. You're there. Yes. It's an IDS sponsored event. There's tons of people there. I think there was a couple hundred last time, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Tons of vendors. It's just a fun night. There's giveaways. There's drinking. There's food, and then you're sitting there. You're competing in a competition. A friendly competition, for that matter, against fellow students.
Yeah, it's all anonymous. Nobody knows your name. Exactly. You have a number and sort of find out at the end.
If people are interested in Swatched, I'll put a link in the show notes so people can access that, because this will release before the next Swatch event, which is in October.
Too,
yeah, exactly. But with that, we'll close off. Thank you again, Marie, for your time.
Thank you so much.
I'll see you hopefully at the event this week.